Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Yeah, we're trying to get started on time. I've had the pleasure and honor of serving as the past year's board chair. My name is Candy Pasternak. I've been my husband and I have been a fixture in downtown Davenport since 1994. I mean, I know some of you other members have a lot more time in than we do, but we're very proud to make downtown Davenport our business home. First, as we get started today, I would like to recognize our board members. If our board members would stand up. These people dedicate much time, energy, and talents to moving the goals and missions of Downtown Davenport Partnership forward in conjunction with our work with the city and city leaders. At this time, I'd also like to recognize some of our outgoing members: Nick Cox, Kyle Day, Michelle Hargrave, Gwendolyn Lee, the past chair, and Henry Marquardt. Thank you all for your service. I think we all know that the impact of downtown Davenport extends much far beyond our borders. And I think the prime example of how much growth we've had is the alternating current events, which I know that our executive director is very proud of, as well as Alicia, who's been instrumental in getting that to move forward. We're very proud of the growth of that particular event, not only in Davenport, but throughout the Quad Cities. I know we all look forward to Kyle's energy as he makes his presentation of the developments over the past year and plans for the future. And I know that he's ready to give us a good presentation again today. None of the work that we try to accomplish would be accomplished without the input and participation of our stakeholders, who are basically all of you here in this room. And so thank you for supporting your Downtown Davenport Partnership in its goals and missions. At this point in time, I would like to welcome Mayor Mike Batson up for his opening remarks.
Good morning, and thank you everyone for coming. I just want to take a moment and welcome you and say thank you for what you do. The Downtown Davenport Partnership, Kyle and everyone and all the board members and everyone here, very important what you do, critical part of our community, both in Davenport and the Quad Cities, as we talk about the beacon and the attention that the Quad Cities brings to the front porch of Iowa. I was just at the MLK ribbon cutting the other day, and just another example of people coming together to help improve our community, and everything you guys do here, working together. And I love the one opening slide there, the big word that says Downtown Davenport Partnership. Nobody can do anything by themselves. We try and talk about that a lot in the city. We can't do it by themselves. You can't do it by yourselves. So as much as we can collaborate and bring people together to work on things, especially in the downtown, and that's why we're here today. So as Ms. Pasternak talked about her time in relationship to downtown, raise your hand if you remember the time before the mall. There should be a few people. Not anyone? Okay, I was going to say there should be some, because we used to have little things in the windows of Peterson, who used to be in the downtown, and all these others. And so I'm saying this because I was a kid, and that's my relationship early on. And we used to have a dump burning down there. We used to have a lot of things that weren't very popular. But through the work of so many people over time, I talk about my evolution and also the downtown's evolution, and through the great work of the partnership, this growth, this investment that he's going to talk about, this evolution of our city and especially the downtown to become one of the examples of downtowns and what things should look like for the Midwest, is because of the hard work of you. So all of you here today. So thank you very much for what you do. Look forward to hearing what you have to say always, Mr. Carter. Partnerships are important, and we're just at the City of Davenport glad to be part of it. Thank you.
All right, test. Excuse me. Thank you for such a great welcome from everybody. I'm Kyle Carter. I'm the Executive Director of the Downtown Partnership, and it's an absolute honor to serve the people in this room. We've got some really exciting themes today. I think if you leave today feeling better than you walked in the door, then I've done my job. Because there's a lot to celebrate. And we're going to start on what might seem like a somber note, but it's not. It's very celebratory. This is going to tee up the thematic piece of this entire presentation. Gene Meeker had the job before I did, way back in 1993 and through the early 2000s, and was one of my earliest mentors. Gene was not only a kind and wonderful man, but he cared deeply about community development. And when he showed up in 1993, those of you who have been here for a while, as the mayor alluded, saw a very different place. And the legacy that this man left behind is gigantic. The flower basket program that we all now just take for granted, Gene built that. River Renaissance, Figge Art Museum, RME, now Common Cord, 2 parking ramps, Sky Bridge. These are partnerships. These are things that lots of people were involved in. But Gene was the man in the job at the time at Downtown Development Corporation in the day that he began to help make all that stuff come together. He helped pave the way for the expansion of our taxing district back in 1996, and then also paved the way for what would later become Davenport 1, and today the Downtown Davenport Partnership, and I'll get back to that in a little bit. But I wanted to start here because we have to appreciate our past to understand where we need to go in the future. And I owe a lot to this man, and his passing recently, while of course sad, any one of us would be lucky to live to our late 80s and leave the legacy behind that this guy did in every single community he lived in. And the theme of today is vision and really leaning into a bold future for downtown. And Gene believed that with his heart and soul. And with that, we're going to lean right into it. So today with our overview, we're going to kind of look at where we've been and where we're going. But I know this is a little redundant for folks who've been here for the years, but I think once a year it's good to remind us what we really do for a living. Place management is this weird space in the gray between the private sector and public sector. And as Gene actually loved to use to say, you know, we're kind of that glue in between. And so it is our mission to take what the city could otherwise do here and take it up to here through the public-private partnership. And so we have these 3 big categories of work: advocacy, promotion, infrastructure, livability, business and economic growth. Every little thing we do, from the flower baskets to the festivals to recruiting business, falls in one of these big 3 categories. And every day our staff works on that. So again, just kind of another friendly reminder back to that history I alluded to. We're the amalgamation of 5 different organizations that came together. The reason that we throw parties, represent small business, represent big business, do all of the work that we do is that each one of these used to be independent organizations that we very wisely merged many years ago to have one more powerful organization. We still live as an arm of the chamber, but this is why we do the work that we do. But what does it mean? Well, there's 290 businesses represented in this room today, 159 million of taxable value, City of Davenport. That is money that these folks actually put into the bucket, not just the total assessed value. That question gets asked a lot, and that number is going up, and I'll have another slide that speaks to that. Over 422 parcels, 2,200 residents, and 33 board members operate this space, the 2 different taxing districts of the core and our edges out on the west and east. Back to the comment about Gene expanding in 1996, Zone B is that expansion. There was a big debate about how we were going to make the tent bigger many years ago, and that was what we came to, and we've retained those borders ever since. So just another kind of high-level thing before we start getting further in the weeds. I was elected a new member of the IDA Government Legislative Committee at the federal level. So the people who work in my industry across the country have a small panel of people that help influence federal policy when it comes to anything that affects you in downtown. And that's been a really exciting thing for me to be a part of. Alicia earned her Leadership in Place Management certification this year from IDA. I'm proud to say that in the chamber now we have multiple. Ryan Jancey's in the room too, who recently earned his LPM too. And we continue to do training to make sure that we're giving the best ideas and the best qualified people running your money. So who are those people? These people. This is the staff that we could never do this work without. So before I get into anything else, I want to do a huge thank you to Olivia and Tony and Alicia for the just absolute grind that this work can be sometimes. But we do it because we love it, and we do it because you guys put up just as much work as we do. And on top of that, oh, thank you. You guys beat me to the applause. You're going to have to do it again, because the guys that do the even harder work on the ground, cleaning every day, making downtown look great, cleaning up things that I don't even want to describe to you on any given day of the week, making this place shine, are the gentlemen in the back, our ambassador team wearing bright green. Please stand and give a huge thank you for them. Yes, you are the real MVP. I will always know that and appreciate that. And please know that this room greatly appreciates what you guys do every day, because capital follows talent, talent follows place, and place needs investment. And if you ever think that we need to lift off the foot of the gas pedal, you are wrong, because the rest of the country and all the other Midwestern cities are running as fast as they can, and the talent pool is small. This community fights for every bit of resources it can get among itself, let alone the competitive nature of the United States right now. This is the why behind everything that we do. And if we don't lean into this, we're going to be in trouble 20 years from now. But thankfully, I think we are going to be just fine, and here's why. The last couple of years, our budget continues to grow because your businesses continue to grow and our property value continues to grow. We rolled in about $1.5 million last year in revenue between the very wonderful generosity of Rhythm City Casinos Agreement, city services, and of course the actual SMID tax funds that you provide. You'll notice that we spent more than we made last year at about 1.7 versus 1.5. That was very intentional. We've been pooling resources over the years, building our savings account, and you're starting to see us put out more capital into the downtown, and we're going to talk about how we did that. That was by design, and we have plenty of resources to be able to do that, in large part because of this slide. I know I posted this last year, but I wanted to remind folks that the tax value of what you guys do drives a huge amount of value for the general fund of the city of Davenport. Down here, you'll see the piece that's related specifically to URTE, which is a program that abates taxes for a period of time, enabling property owners to invest without getting whacked with a big tax bill over time that burns off, and then the city receives more for its general fund, which, speaking of public-private partnerships, this has worked extraordinarily well. It's very similar to a TIF program, but it has been the bread and butter for how we've built some of our biggest projects, and you can see how these revenues are going to climb over time. More on that in a minute, but back to kind of the daily grind, as I mentioned. We had over 1,900 business assists through DDP this year, which was a huge increase over last year. Entrepreneur referrals, operations calls for Tony and the gang in the back, advocacy calls, 567 interactions with local and state and federal government officials this year from our department alone. That does not include the broader chamber. That is literally just what happens out of our department. Through that, we've done a lot of other work. Our ambassador team, as I mentioned, who so deservedly got that round of applause, 459 graffiti tags removed, 624 cubic yards of trash, snow removal for over 450 hours, and yes, that dog waste number is real. There's a lot of dogs in downtown Davenport, and we do our best to keep it looking good down here. And of course, one more nod to Gene with that flower pot program, having grown to an incredible place where there's over 700 baskets and many more ground planters. So one of the things that we've done with our ambassador team is we've started to use a new piece of software called Aponic. We now get to track on a daily basis what everybody is doing on a very specific level. You can see all the different pieces, and I know we're not going to get into every one of these categories, but by the end of the year, there'll be thousands of different data points for us to look at to see where our hotspots are, what blocks are causing trouble, and why, and problem solve those issues. Speaking of challenges, our friends from the social services are in the room today. Vera French in humility, and also the library has had a role in this too. There is still a lot of need for mental health and homeless services throughout not just Davenport, the Quad Cities, but the nation. These are some pretty eye-popping stats on how many assistance or how much assistance is going on as of now, but the truth is we need more. And so we continue to encourage everyone in the room to support these organizations, as they are very much our partners in addressing this. But this is a much, much bigger issue than a local one. But we want to say thank you to the folks that are here today from these organizations helping that. So kind of pulling back up to the big picture as we start moving through this, there is a plan here, folks. In case anybody's wondering, we don't just wake up in the morning and decide what we're going to do that day. We established with the city a master plan a couple of years ago, back in 2020, that we've made incredible progress on, and we're going to start to get into the meat and potatoes of that now. So we had over $42 million of construction completed just this past year. So that's June to July over the past year, another 27 under construction, and much, much more in the works. And of course, you see the great big number of the last 24 years now, and I still think that's conservative. My gut check is that we're much closer to $1 billion, but I try to be very, very conservative in how we measure this. So in a year that we've been bouncing back from COVID, getting through a lot of other really challenging stuff in the city of Davenport, downtown proves to be resilient over and over again. Housing has grown again. We had a huge property open near the YMCA with the addition of Federal Point apartments. Those are low to moderate income housing, and they have leased faster than anything else in the portfolio of the developer that they're building right now. Meanwhile, we're adding a lot of market rating projects right now. We've got 175 under construction, places like Bucktown and others we'll dive into in just a minute. But you can see that we're creeping toward 2,000 total units, and the math on this is that there's like 1.2 people per unit. So that's where you get that math of around 2,000, 2,200 human beings that actually live down here. So what are they spending their money on? Well, food and beverage, specialty retail, all those numbers are up. We continue to see a recovery from the worst of the pits of COVID, basically. We're still producing a lot of sales tax, a lot of food and beverage tax, and these are, of course, above and beyond what the properties themselves produce. So we're continuing to see that recovery. 26 new retained or expanded businesses this year, and it's been a little bit of everybody. It's been office, it's been retail, it's been there is nonprofits, front of house stuff up in the taller buildings. It's been a really good balance this year. None more probably obvious though than the last picture house. Pete Stopulus was the developer of this project. There were many other people and incentives involved and partners involved, but Pete and everyone did just an incredible job putting this project together. The fact that we have an independently owned movie theater who was founded by two guys from the Quad Cities on the riverfront with a rooftop screening, which are sold out routinely in a market our size, is unbelievable. The fact that this spaceship landed in downtown Davenport is a testament to the work that we've been doing for 30 years down here. So I hope you guys have all checked this out. It is truly amazing, and it is a crown jewel of this community, and I mean that broadly, not just downtown Davenport. That thing's amazing. More good news. We had the mayor referenced Martin Luther King Park opening, which was a spectacular event, by the way. And Ryan Sadler, thanks again if you're here for the work that you did. The Bowstring Lofts opened up this year over at Western and 2nd. Great River Brewery is back from the dead. I see that they're here today. Thank you. Wonderful project. And we have the Garrison, which took the old wood fire space, which was a huge, huge investment. R3 Roofing cleaned up the former Antonella space, and of course the Federal Point apartments there. And Convict Customs is one that flies under the radar. These guys make spectacular, really unusual custom motorcycles, and they're right out there on the edge of our district on the western front. And if you don't know those guys, you'll hear about them more soon. So what was our contribution to all this? DDP, of course, exists to help the private sector do more. So we here invested $168,000 of our own grant money, and really, that's what's available coming in FY25. We've added $14 million of private investment through about $1.8 million in grants since '08. But this year, here we go, we really leaned into exterior and structural improvements. Nobody in this room needs to be told why structural improvements are so important after the year that we've had. We have many excellent property owners that invest heavily in their properties. This is the norm. This is the average. These are the type of property owners that populate this room and make sure that this place stands for many, many years to come, strong, proud, and safe. Great River Brewery, the H&R Block Building, Peterson, Mantra, these are all properties that we've put money into, and this is just a splash of what I know has been done down here. Roofs have been replaced. Tons of work has been done. Some of the other grants that we specifically provided helped get the Garrison done and Great River Brewery over the hump. But these are still just micro examples of what's been done over the last year. The big ones that are under construction right now, you can't miss the apartments on Main at 3rd and Main. And I know I get this question all the time. The parking for this will be fine. The developer who owns this also owns the parking ramp that's privately owned across the street that's tied to the old Davenport Bank building. There is more than enough parking for the people that will be living here, I assure you. On top of that, the YMCA came out of left field and announced a soccer field, which was awesome. Brad surprised me with that a couple of years ago when they were first talking about it. And it's such a cool idea. It's going to bring tons of families down here. You guys have seen what the TBK Center has done in Bettendorf, which, by the way, I've seen baseball teams at Stompbox who were here for TBK events staying in the DoubleTree and eating in downtown Davenport. Now, this will be a little micro version of that. It's not the TBK Center, but having tons of families coming to these soccer fields will populate your businesses, and it will drive a lot more traffic. Meanwhile, the Executive Square building is now called the Legacy. The gentleman who's doing that is just gotten his SBA loan approved, and you're going to be seeing some construction and the resurrection of that building, which has been quiet since the collapse last year. American Power Systems has invested. You'll see another really cool project there in the old 3E building on 5th. This one's kind of flying under the radar. Very cool mixed-use project with housing and first-floor commercial. That one's a sleeper because people just don't always drive down 5th, but it's going to be a really great addition to downtown. Then our friends at Rock River Family Office are cutting some new windows in down there and expanding their office as well, which is wonderful to see. In the works and down the road, we still have a lot of things that we want to get done, the most significant of which is at the former YMCA site on the west end. You'll see this giant complex down here that's been proposed. We are hoping that that gets off the ground. The financing needs to move through, but the property owner has closed on the property and purchased it from the YMCA. If we can get this done, it will completely unlock the value of the West End, and you will see things change from basically Ripley and starting hurling toward Marquette, but definitely from Gaines to Ripley. There are some incentives that we need to talk about at both the city and private level that it's going to take to get something like that built when interest rates remain high, and this is a very challenging piece of math to figure out. However, I think we need to lean into this at both the private and public level to figure out how to make sure we get a huge market rate building with commercial and market rate apartments built on the west side of downtown to unlock the value of the rest of what we've already been building down there. We'll get to Destination Iowa more in a minute. We still have some great plans for the former Howard Johnson site, but it's a very similar conversation to the Y. That's going to take a big bag of teamwork to get done in the current environment that we're in financially. Red Band is going to be doing some really exciting redesigns to make sure that they are adding more capacity for more cars and getting them off the street, which will also reorient for the two-way street conversion. And then, of course, there's other projects like the Mississippi Plaza that are in the works, and First Bridge is still out there. I know that one's challenging, but I do love Kathy's vision, and I hope we can get there someday. One of my personal favorites that I'm going to just take a minute on here is the building at 4th and Iowa has been a challenge for many years. It's the former Oriole grocery store and also had another retailer there. Astor Furniture is going to be moving into a portion of that building, and I'm really, really pleased. It's been like a career goal of mine to get this shined up and finally start to see something happen there. And kudos to the folks at Astra, and we are going to see that all come together here in the next year. Back to the YMCA for a minute. I wanted to just pull back and recognize the just incredible value that this entity has brought to our community. Just in downtown alone, these are the kind of numbers that the Y has helped drive as a nonprofit, mind you, and allowed the private sector to do more. The late Dick Bittner was a big reason for this, too. and the Bechtel Trust remains a big champion of downtown, for the record. But I just wanted to say thanks, Brad, for a minute, and really acknowledge just the power of the YMCA and how good it has been for us. Moving on back kind of the western corridor, just to put it in perspective back to how important it is to try and figure out the math on this development. This is how big the site is of the old Y. It's literally a square block. And when the Y moved and built their new palace down here, it's an opportunity. This is a huge opportunity to move the West End forward. You can start to see how all of my griping over the years about two-way streets and walkability and trying to make the downtown a true grid, like it was built originally, by the way, you can start to see why this just gets choked off in its current format. There's some great businesses down here, but they live on a bit of an island. We've done wonderful development all up and down in this area, but if we're ever going to get truly to Gaines, redevelop Gaines fully, and march toward Marquette, this is the linchpin to making that happen, in my humble opinion. So I'm hopeful that we can start to see that move forward. Meanwhile, in the central corridor, a lot of other things are changing. We've mentioned the massive 3rd and Main apartments. We still have a lot of work to do, I think, in the central corridor, just because things have changed. You know, COVID changed the office outlook. Occupancies are still pretty good, but we've got to make sure that people think of downtown first when they think of where they might want to move their office. We still have wonderful opportunities in the Redstone building, the CBI building, US Bank, Parker, Putnam. These are beautiful, high-quality facilities, which, again, are doing pretty well, but I just know we can do better. And so I think we need to continue to look at ways that we can incentivize and market and bring to people's attention that if you want to be a small business owner or you want a modestly sized office, these are awesome options that are reasonably priced. And you're going to see DDP pushing that harder in the coming years. Now, meanwhile, on the East End and Motor Row and Bucktown neighborhood, we have seen crazy growth over the last few years. And let me remind you that in 2019, I rode a John boat down the middle of this street. And I will never forget that. In fact, I was with Gay, who's here somewhere. There you are, Gay, yes. Do you recall, John boating with me over to Bucktown? And I will never forget that. In that span of time, we have built the crown jewel that I talked about already. Our friends from the distillery are here. Great River is back. The Raccoon Motel and Trash Can Annie's and Ragged Records are in a bigger, better place right around the corner. The Peterson Paper Building is full. We have one of the brightest, shiniest objects in all of downtown, and a place that some people thought 5 years ago would be left for dead, which once again talks about the power of vision and why we have to stick to the plan. Here's a good example of where we've come and where we're going. My wife, who is here, thank you, Maureen, was adamant that this make the presentation. The real point of this slide is notice the windows in the background that have metal sheets over them, a vacant building in the background that we used to store our gators in. Great River was the only thing happening on this corner at the time, which is probably why I was in such a good mood. And you see all of the activity, the business. Notice there's no cars in the background. Notice there are mini cars in the background. And yes, we also produced a child in this window of time. But if we don't take time to look back and appreciate and celebrate, it's really easy to get lost in the weeds. And I am the first person to be guilty of that. As my staff knows, I can get in a mood sometimes worrying about all the things that are not working and not take time to celebrate the things that are. So speaking of the things that are, look at the incredible people in this room and outside this room that make this happy. We celebrated a great anniversary with Bootleg and our friends down just all the way down the street, frankly. They should all be very recognizable to you. Olivia, great pose, by the way. Thanks for the inspiration. So there's an enormous amount of growth still going on, particularly in that corridor. But back to our cleaning ambassadors for just a minute. These guys are working 7 days a week, and here's all the different things that you'll see that they do on any given day. I can't reiterate enough that if it's not nice, you guys are not going to spend the kind of money that you have anywhere in downtown if it looks like there's tumbleweeds and trash blowing everywhere. The reason that I bring this up is that we have so many public spaces and so many other ways that we engage with downtown. It's very important that we keep these areas shiny, which leads me to Martin Luther King Park. one of the least shiny parts of downtown at the corner of 5th and Main had been basically a concrete just desert for decades. It was actually, at one time, a bustling business where black businesses were this was the first location of the first black-owned business in the city of Davenport in the 1800s. That whole corridor had an entire lively, active area of black-owned businesses. The fact that Martin Luther King Park was put in this location was very intentional. And so the comments that were said that day by speakers far more eloquent than I were moving. And I just wanted to point out that, again, this is such an opportunity to celebrate what the Quad Cities looks like when we're working at our best. And MLK Park is just a shining example of that. Meanwhile, speaking of placemaking, we're also going to be building some new historic iron archways and overhead lighting up and down Emerson Alley. We are not the first community to do this. There are many other cities that have done beautification projects like this, but DDP paid for 100% of this project. It was inspired by the designs of the welcome sign and the handwriting of our former day trotter artist, Johnny Clooney, and we carried those art themes through, with the Arsenal Bridge and the Centennial being the obvious themes of how the design came together. So in Emerson Alley, you're going to see lighting go all the way from Perry to Pershing and Pershing to Iowa. That's going to beautify that alley, make it feel safe, make it feel more pedestrian friendly, and we will have iron archways on each end of it that will really tie the thing together. Meanwhile, we're going to add a little baby archway between the two buildings here on 2nd Street, which there's this really cool barrel house alley, which will draw people's eyes and hopefully help them discover all of the cool businesses that are hiding on the other side of 2nd Street. This project's been in the work for almost 4 years, was part of our master plan, and it will be constructed this summer. We just got the design review approval this week from the city, and we are green light go on that project. So in that alley, you might have seen the awesome mural that Alicia coordinated for Alternating Currents last year. The artists were all local that did this, and it blew away my expectations. We're going to be doing that again, I believe, on Dan's fence, if I'm not mistaken, outside of Armored Gardens. You're going to see a similar really cool project come out of the ground during Alternating Currents. And then we partnered with our really good friends at Quad City Arts to continue our participation in the rotating art program. So hopefully you saw all these sculptures change out and many other murals to come. We budgeted over $40,000 for public art this year, and I think you're going to see even more. Miscellaneous projects are often my favorite. I know like the big stuff gets the headlines, but this is the stuff that I get excited about. A crosswalk beacon at 2nd Street that we battled for. We have lights on Western Avenue. It's not pitch black anymore. That was an effort for years that came together. We resurfaced the alley at Emerson. The guys at Y&J took it upon themselves to clean I called it Halligan Hill for lack of a better word. All that tree and overgrowth off 4th Street, we did throw them a few bucks, but this was their project and their idea. Cleaned up that entire corridor on 4th Street. It looks like a park compared to what it used to be. Added some brick banding there on 5th Street, and we did holiday lighting. And then Tony gets all the credit for this one. There's a weird little alleyway in the viaduct of the railroad between 2nd Street, and he took the Bobcat and went to town over there and cleaned that thing up, and it looked like a disaster before that. So thanks for that again, Tony. So what else have we been up to? I mentioned the archways, streetscape repairs. We're going to be doing more electrical grid work, skywalk improvements between the hotels, that's between Mid-American, Doubletree, and the Blackhawk. And then, of course, Main Street sewer and streetscape is a vision that we have, too. We got some work to do on that one, but we still want to get streetscape done on Main Street. Which brings me to the big conversation about infrastructure. And this is the headline, folks. Give me 4 slides, and this will all make sense. We have been slowly, methodically, and very strategically building flood mitigation since the city approved its big plan about 3-4 years ago now. In that time, we have garnered an enormous amount of grant and private funding. Most recently was this one that specifically is going to change the elevations around River Drive and Mound at the Village. It's going to retain access to the Arsenal at 3rd and LeClaire. 2nd and Gaines is going to get an elevation change at the Centennial Bridge, keeping access to it. And 2 sections of Rockingham, Marquette, and road repair west of Rockingham, too. So to put this in perspective, when all of this work is done, it's going to tie in to our street conversion, which again, there's a method to the madness here. To have a detour that actually functions, that the federal government will pay for, that runs all the way from the deep, deep West End, all the way to the village to Bettendorf, you need to be able to have a place that during high water, we have a detour that is guaranteed to be open up to 21 feet, if I'm not mistaken. This will all tie in. The funding that was raised will pay for the intersections that have to be built at River Drive, at 3rd and 4th. All of that will be paid for by grant money. And the reason that this works is that it also ties into Destination Iowa and all of the work that we've been doing to beautify and activate our riverfront. So, of course, flood mitigation plays into this. I'm well aware that there's a wall sitting on River Drive right now. But had the construction been done on this piece right here, these two roads would still be open right now with no reason to even worry about having to make the weird detour changes that we have today. Once that work is done and that underground work is finished, this will all connect. We were this close to having it active before the water came up recently. But back to that in a minute. Destination Iowa is going to change the face of this community forever in a wonderful, wonderful way. All of this playscape is going to be developed. Families will have a real reason to spend time down here. And we'll tie all this together eventually heading this direction to the farmers market, baseball stadium, and LeClaire Park. That plan is still a different issue and down the road here shortly, but I want to make sure that people are connecting the dots here, because some of the concepts that have been put together by the city at this point are really exciting, and it's something that all ages are going to be able to take advantage of. Imagine the stuff that you saw in Chicago outside of Mary J. Daley Park. It's that kind of playground equipment that we're talking about that will tie all this in together, but it's not just there for fun. It also ties into railroad quiet zones, which I'll get back to in a second. Meanwhile, the Figgy invested in itself, and we're going to have this incredible artistic lighting display where the entire ice cube is going to gleam and glow and change colors in artistic patterns. That'll be done in tandem with what the city is doing on the riverfront. And meanwhile, we piled in money for the railroads. We heard a while ago that train traffic is tripling along the riverfront. And if I have to listen to those horns blast 3 times as often as they do today, I'll lose my mind, and I can't even imagine how it affects your businesses. When this is done, they will only have to pull their horn when the engineer deems an emergency or they see something that they feel is unsafe. 90% of the time, they will not be railing on their horn. That affects hotels. We have, if you read Yelp reviews, that sometimes pops up of, yeah, I woke up at 3 in the morning. Well, this is why. This is actually detrimental to residential. It's detrimental to business. And getting this taken care of is a big, big deal. So, to total this all up, that's $60 million of public and private investment that's coming. $50.5 million of it was paid for out of grants and private sector assistance, aka 84% discount on a $60 million project for critically needed infrastructure for us to actually succeed and for your businesses to survive over the next 20 years. The man in the room responsible for this, there are many, politicians, private sector, all levels of staff. However, the guy that was strategically, quietly, methodically, brilliantly stitching all this money together and stacking it in one big pile so that we could do it in a giant swing is Clay Merritt, and he's here today. Thank you. I appreciate you beating me to the applause because I was going to demand it if you didn't do it. Clay, thank you for that. Mallory, thank you for your leadership. Mayor, thank you for ushering gently through, and many others. There are many, many, many people responsible for this. But this, if we didn't pull this off, we were going to be in big, big trouble. And I am very proud to say that we did pull it off, and we are going to pull it off, and you're going to start seeing it happen. So, moving on. Advocacy, government policy. I think I just leaned into that pretty hard. But the Office and Housing Development is going to need help. TIF policy is going to be discussed in the city soon. We are going to have to revise and rethink how those policies get used to make sure that projects like the West Side YMCA site get done, the former Howard Johnson site. These are all tools that we need in the toolbox, both at the state, federal, and local level. Public safety is still a real thing. One of the joys that I've had at the federal level working with IDA is that I get to help influence money that comes to police forces that we so desperately need in all of our communities. I am well aware that there are still safety initiatives that need prioritized in downtown. We would still love to be able to see a budget where kind of the old beat cop is available and you see that presence on the street and feel that presence on the street. That's the dream. The truth is the money is not there to do it right now. I'm hopeful that through some federal work and hopefully maybe even at the local level we can begin to look at that. I think we've done a wonderful job dealing with security. Our police force has been fantastic, but the truth is we still need more support, and I think we'll start to see more conversations at every level of government. This feeds back into our earlier challenges with mental health, with housing assistance. There is not enough money in these buckets. We need to be advocating hard so that folks like Vera French, Humility, others, the VA, have the resources they need to help the people that need it the most. And until we do that, these issues are not going to resolve themselves. But in the meantime, we still have a lot of other good news. And I know that that can be kind of a downer sometimes, but we have to accept the reality of the whole picture of what we have to do here. So speaking of the whole picture, you guys have been doing a killer job marketing. Some of my favorite pictures of just celebratory moments throughout downtown. Olivia is responsible for a lot of these. She lives downtown and gets to really experience it firsthand. You see Robbie's cool stuff there, the weekly roundup stuff. Bill's shining face. Wouldn't be downtown without you, Bill. We have so many good things going on and so many good stories to tell. We have crushed our social media numbers over the last number of years. Downtown Davenport continues to be a focal point for visitors. And speaking of visitors, our good pal Dave is here from Visit Quad Cities. And I explained to him just before this meeting, I'm going to make this real quick. Visitors are up. Visitors are good. We need more. I don't know how else to say that, but what Dave has done such a good job of, narrative-wise, is reminding people that this is economic development, folks. You bring butts and seats, and it makes money. This is all part and parcel to the big idea of what we're trying to accomplish here, because placemaking activations drive business. And so here's all the different stuff that we've done. We did the lemonade sip and shop, the hot cocoa sip and shop. If you recall from last year's meeting, DDP promised it was going to double down on retail-level promotion and small business support, and we did that. And these are all great examples of both independent parties that people threw, as well as stuff DDP led themselves. The holiday challenge, who knew pickles were so popular? We continue to see a huge gain in the number of people year over year who are coming down for our holiday events and Deck the Downtowns promotions, which, by the way, we partner with Rock Island and Bettendorf on and have made that regional. Bummer note on the canceled ice extravaganza, which, of course, ironically was canceled for ice and snow. But it is what it is. We still wanted to give our sponsors, Rubber Stamps, TBK, Metronet, Family Credit Union. We had so many people who invested and kept their money in this event, even though it was canceled. And I think the public should know that our sponsors didn't turn their back on us. They kept their money. They allowed us to continue to do this, frankly, and do it again. So we'll be back with a vengeance next year on that. And then speaking of canceled events, Red, White, and Boom is going to be postponed, not canceled. Last year's was spectacular. We're meeting on Friday to determine the new date. The powers that be are going to get together with Rock Island and figure it out. We will have a fireworks show eventually, folks. Don't worry. But we've done this before. The water has forced us to do all kinds of crazy things over the year. And so fear not, we will celebrate America in due time. In the meantime, I would encourage you to go to the baseball stadium that day. It is still open. Dave will be happy to see you. They will have their, the other Dave, sorry. They will have their own fireworks show, and it'll still be awesome, just not quite as awesome as Red, White, and Boom. But please think about going to the ball game that night and supporting the cause. Meanwhile, we did Bix last year and Ragbri, in case anybody forgot. Bix Bri was awesome. As always, there's always murmurs of, what about the infrastructure, and do we have enough? It was fine. It went great. Went off without a hitch. Kudos to Visit Quad Cities, the city of Davenport. truth be told, DDP had a very small role in this event, and I am very thankful for the people who carried the weight. We did most of the events in LeClaire Park, but that was cake compared to the big idea. And of course, this year is BIC's 50th anniversary, which is awesome. We're so excited to celebrate with them this year, and we're going to be doubling down with a bigger event in LeClaire Park, and they are doubling down with a bigger event at the finish line. And of course, we'll have our folks on 3rd and downtown Davenport doing their thing. But no event these days is bigger than alternating currents. I want to give a very special thank you to Alicia for the amount of work that this is truly her passion project. We may have founded this with Jason, who's in the room, back in 2017. But the truth is, you have really elevated this event to a place that I didn't even think it could go. We now are activating, I mean, look at these numbers. 30 small businesses and stages, 150 local vendors, 200 acts, screening and events, thousands of visitors. Like, we orchestrate this annually, folks, while we're doing all of the other work that we've described today. This has the power to be the calling card for the Quad Cities on a national scale. The dream is that someday Moline and Bettendorf have a weekend, Rock Island and Davenport have a weekend, and we do this like South by Southwest over the course of like a month or 2 weeks. We're getting there. We're not there yet, but the bones are so strong, and this is our future. It supports small business. It supports local art and national art. It presents downtown Davenport in a way that we want to be seen. This is the type of place that people want to move to, want to live, want to visit, and this activates us in a way that no other event possibly can. Very proud of this and appreciate you guys and your support. So, looking forward to my favorite slide of the day. Hell or high water, folks. We've seen it all. We'll get through it, and we've done it before. I shared this with some of my other professionals in my industry around the state when we were trying to one-up each other on who had the baddest, worst week, I should say. And I said, well, did anybody have flames shoot out of their sewers? And the room conceded that this was, in fact, the winner. To Mid-American's credit, this was solved very quickly. And to the city's credit, the water on the riverfront right now is barely affecting anything. The wall is working. We barely even needed it. We'll see how the water goes. But with any luck, this will be a very moderate event. And this community is very good at responding to crisis and overcoming. So on that note, we just need to stick to the plan. We have one. Don't forget it. From both the private and public sector, we have a giant book this big of ideas and things that we know are going to move this community forward, many of which we've talked today. We need to be playful, livable, innovative, inclusive, celebrated, and those things do have specific meanings if you bother to read the tome that is the master plan. The more we keep this in mind, the more we can overcome any of the problems like the one I just showed. So coming up, you're going to see some new marketing initiatives because we have got to get some better good vibes out there for Davenport as a whole. And we are doing video series about the residents that live down here called QC Cribs. I hope you've seen some of those. Downtown Arts and Culture is going to get new money. We're doing small business video features this year. And we're going to even be leaning into a new branding campaign that we're going to build the foundations for this year that I'm very excited about, that really starts to tell the tale of Central, East, and West downtown. They're very different places. It's all one big unit. But we have some unique stories to tell about different pockets of downtown, and I think you're going to start to see that come out over the next year. So we had a lot of anniversaries, from Tiffany's to Lopez to Me and Billy's, Abernathy's. Go down the list. We had so much fun just celebrating with everyone at all of these events. Max Tavern celebrated 90 years, which anybody who's known me long enough knows that this is my home base. The fact that that place has stood through all the crazy stuff that's happened in Davenport for 90 years is further proof that downtown will be just fine. Meanwhile, this is one that slipped through the cracks for a lot of people. The U.S. Bank building turned 100 years old. Yet another example of a well taken care of building with spectacular tenants that's seen it all down here for 100 years. And the gentleman who really runs the operations of that building was so proud and so excited to show this to the world today. And just wanted to point that out. Other good news vibes, the Capitol Theater continues to be an anchor for for the West Side, and lots of new shows. Hopefully you guys saw some of the big stuff they announced this week. Major acts coming through there. along with the Adler, of course. Voted #1 minor league baseball park again for our stadium. Just so many cool stories. The Cigar Lounge story was awesome. Didn't know if you guys caught Mandy Moore gave us a shout out at one point as she's dating a gentleman that plays at the Raccoon Motel. Thank you, Sean, for that one. There's just so many cool stories to tell, and I could spend hours talking about every one of them, but just wanted to take a moment to celebrate and remember. The other thing that downtown Davenport specifically needs to keep in mind is that if you think the other people in this community are standing around while we're moving forward, you're wrong. East Moline is dropping $26 million in streetscape to tie the Rust Belt into their downtown and their hotel district. Rock Island is literally gutted itself to give a full rebirth to what they're doing. The artwork that Jack and the gang led over there is spectacular. And you want to talk about foot on the gas, Rock Island is really focused right now on changing fundamentally its downtown. Meanwhile, you've got Bettendorf, who has a $1 billion bridge that just got done along with Moline. Moline is doing very transformational riverfront planning right now, and Bettendorf has some major projects in the works that are on the horizon that are going to change the face of it right up there off 74. This is good for the goose, good for the gander. The Quad Cities is going to live or die together. Let me repeat that. We do not have enough resources in this community to slit each other's throats. It is good when this stuff happens, but I hope it's fuel to remember that in this room, in downtown Davenport, we have to keep pushing forward or other people are going to run past us, even at the local level. So I think this is awesome. It should be celebrated, and it should be a motivator for what we need to keep doing, because the vision matters. If we keep trying to look at all the problems that we've got with this community and not keep our eye on the ball of what we can, have, and are going to do, we're missing the big idea here. There's still tons of growth that we can do in the main area. Ground Transportation Center is a huge, full block site that we could do something with in the private sector when the city moves on from that station. We've talked about the Y, the Capitol, Main Street Landing. We have got to keep the big idea in mind. And I'll close with some words of wisdom from Gene, which I thought, this was from 1993, like first week on the job. You know, I'm not riding in on a white horse, and I don't have all the answers. Downtown development is a process that takes public and private cooperation. I see myself as the glue that holds it all together. And the I in this scenario is this room. We are the I here. We are the glue that holds this together. We are the difference in whether or not this works. Downtown Davenport Partnership was founded in 1976 because it was clear neither the private or the public sector was going to dig itself out of the hole on its own. We're in this together, whether we like it or not. There are days that I know we want to throttle one another, but the truth of the matter is this is a team game, and we're only winning if we keep our eye on the ball, keep the vision in front of us, and never, ever, ever forget the big idea that together, and we create something bigger than any one of us individually is ever going to do. And so between flooding, flames shooting out of holes in the ground, all the COVID business, everything that you guys have survived over the last 5 years, it's because of this that we haven't fallen apart. Never forget it. Thank you for your investment. It's an honor to work for you, and thank you. We'll see you next year.